Welcome. Today, you're not just watching a speech, you're witnessing a shift in power, a moment in history where truth rises louder than propaganda. This isn't about headlines or politics. It's about the soul of a nation that has finally remembered who it is. India is not rising because it was allowed to. It's rising because it chose to. And the world is beginning to tremble. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear will awaken something deep within you. Something powerful, something unshakable. This is not just India's story, this is your story, and it begins right now. There comes a moment in every nation's journey when it must decide, stand tall or fall in line. For India, that moment arrived when the world was watching closely during the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The West demanded loyalty. It pressured, it lectured, it threatened. It expected India to fall in line, to condemn, to comply. But India didn't bow. It stood firm, eyes steady, voice calm, guided not by pressure, but by principle. India didn't choose sides based on media noise or political trends. It chose based on what served its people, its economy, and its long-term vision. While others spoke with anger, India spoke with wisdom. While others followed, India thought. That act of sovereign decision-making wasn't just about one war. It was a declaration of mental independence. And that's what shook the West. Because for years, they were used to controlling the global narrative. They expected India to act like a follower, like it had in the past when it was still finding its place. But this time, India didn't ask for permission. It didn't look for applause. It simply made its move unapologetic, unshaken. That moment broke the illusion of control. India was no longer the student. It had become a power in its own right. One that didn't need to prove anything, just protect its people and uphold its dignity. When a nation acts not out of fear, but out of clarity, it cannot be bullied. It cannot be bent. This was more than diplomacy. It was destiny, a quiet message wrapped in strength. India will decide for India. And from that day forward, the old strategies didn't work. The usual pressure didn't land. The balance had shifted, and the world knew India had found its voice, and it was no longer echoing anyone else's. There was a time when India had to wait for approvals, for imports, for outside help just to defend itself. The West held the keys. If India wanted fighter jets, missiles, or high-end tech, it had to knock on someone else's door. But those days are over. The rise of the Make in India movement changed everything. India stopped asking. It started building. Today, India is designing and producing its own fighter jets like Tejas, developing precision guided missiles like BrahMos, and deploying indigenous air defense systems that rival the world's best. It's manufacturing tanks, drones, satellites, and warships on Indian soil with Indian hands. That shift didn't just strengthen national defense, it shattered dependence. The same revolution is happening in tech. India is no longer just a back office for global IT companies. It's a hub of innovation, startups, and deep tech. From UPI, redefining digital payments, to ISRO, launching lunar and interplanetary missions on shoestring budgets. India is proving that brilliance doesn't require permission or imported blueprints. This self-reliance is not just about pride, it's about power. Because when a nation builds its own defense systems, writes its own code, launches its own satellites, and engineers its own solutions, no one can hold it hostage. No sanctions, no pressure, no withheld parts can slow it down. The West is no longer the only supplier, and that terrifies those who built influence through control of the arms and tech markets. India broke free, not with noise, but with action, not with rebellion, but with results. It stopped being a customer and became a creator. And the day India began defending itself with its own creations was the day the West realized they had lost a grip they thought would last forever. For decades, global trade has revolved around one currency, the U.S. dollar. It was more than just money. It was power, control, leverage. Nations that wanted to trade, import oil, or settle major deals had to pass through that financial gate, and the West held the key. But slowly, quietly, India began building another door, a door that doesn't require permission, a door called currency diversification. India's recent trade agreements with countries like Russia, Iran, and even some Southeast Asian and African nations have started bypassing the dollar altogether. Deals are being settled in rupees, in local currencies, or through barter. like arrangements that respect sovereignty over system. This isn't just economics, it's evolution. The U.S. dollar gave the West invisible control. With it, they could apply sanctions, block payments, slow economies, and force decisions. But when a rising power like India begins conducting trade outside that net, the net loses strength. That's what's happening now. India is reducing its exposure to dollar risk, building bilateral trade lines, and creating economic ties based on mutual respect rather than imposed compliance. This shift is even more powerful because it's being done with balance. India hasn't declared war on the dollar. It's simply refusing to be caged by it. And in doing so, it's giving other nations the courage to consider the same path. India isn't just trading, it's teaching. And the West knows that when the financial leash breaks, so does the influence that comes with it. Control through currency only works as long as others are afraid to leave the system. But India is walking out with confidence, with calculation, and with clarity. And that's why the world's oldest power brokers are beginning to sweat. Because when trade becomes truly free, so do the nations. Power isn't always about armies and economies. Sometimes true power flows silently, through culture, values, and the soul of a nation. And in 2025, India is no longer just rising economically. It's rising spiritually, culturally, and philosophically. And the world is paying attention. For too long, India's ancient wisdom was either ignored or reduced to stereotypes. But now that same wisdom is leading people across continents. Yoga isn't just exercise, it's become a global movement of healing. Ayurveda isn't just tradition, it's becoming a respected path to wellness. And Indian philosophy, once sidelined, is now being taught in elite Western universities, offering timeless guidance in a chaotic world. India's films, music, literature, and festivals are no longer confined within its borders. They're influencing minds and hearts from New York to Nairobi. But it's more than soft power, it's soul power. Because what India brings to the world isn't just entertainment, it's alignment, it's meaning. It's a reminder that success isn't just measured in profits, but in peace. This cultural and spiritual assertion is not loud, but it's powerful, and it unnerves those who have spent decades defining global narratives. Because for so long, culture flowed one way, west to east, but now the tide is turning. And when that tide rises from a civilization with 5,000 years of wisdom behind it, the shift becomes impossible to ignore. India is no longer borrowing identity, it's embracing its own, proudly, publicly, unapologetically, and when a nation reclaims its soul, it becomes unshakable. The West isn't just watching India rise in GDP, it's watching a civilization remember who it is. And when that happens, the balance of global influence doesn't just shift, it transforms. Not with force, but with faith. Not with domination, but with depth. India's greatest strength in 2025 isn't just in its weapons, economy, or diplomacy. It's in its youth. A generation born into independence, shaped by resilience and powered by technology. These young minds are not just using the internet, they're rewiring the future. They're building startups, launching fintech platforms, developing AI, and turning data into opportunity. And the world is watching, not just with curiosity, but with concern. The average Indian is young, connected, and ambitious. While much of the West is facing an aging crisis, India has a population that is digitally native, socially aware, and ready to lead. From small towns to tech hubs, young Indians are using smartphones like tools of revolution, building businesses on apps, accessing education on screens, and challenging outdated systems with code, not protests. Platforms like UPI have changed the way money moves. Schemes like Digital India have connected the disconnected. And what once was a weakness, poverty, lack of infrastructure, is being flipped into strength through frugal innovation. India is doing more with less, and that terrifies nations used to doing less with more. The youth isn't waiting for permission. They're not seeking approval. They're creating jobs instead of begging for them. They're solving local problems with global implications, from agri-tech to med, tech to space tech. These young innovators are proving that intelligence doesn't belong to one hemisphere, it's rising from the heart of India. This digital revolution isn't just changing lives, it's shifting power. Because when a billion minds start thinking for themselves, building for themselves, and dreaming without fear, the world starts to tremble. The West didn't lose control because of force. They lost it because India's youth stopped waiting and started building. And once the youth takes control of the future, the past can't hold them back. There was a time when the world only knew India through the lens of foreign media. Headlines were shaped thousands of miles away, and stories were often filtered through bias, half-truths, or outright misinformation. India was shown as poor, chaotic, divided, a nation that needed to be told what was right, how to think, how to act. But in 2025, that narrative is breaking, because India has found its own voice, and it's no longer staying silent. When international media outlets twist facts, when foreign think tanks present half-baked reports, when global platforms push narratives that don't reflect the truth on the ground, India now responds. Not with rage, but with clarity, evidence, and confidence. Government bodies, independent thinkers, journalists, and citizens are all challenging the old game. And that's a shift the West never expected. India is no longer reacting, it's reframing. It's building its own media powerhouses, investing in local narratives, and ensuring that its story is told through Indian eyes, not Western scripts. Social media has become a weapon of truth, allowing ordinary citizens to counter lies in real time. And when a billion people wake up to the power of their own perspective, they don't need permission to defend it. This refusal to be manipulated is dangerous for those who built influence on distortion. Because when India starts questioning everything it once accepted blindly, control slips. The usual tactics, shame, blame, deflect, no longer work. The people are aware, the leadership is assertive, and the nation is united in truth. India isn't looking for validation anymore. It's looking for accuracy. And when the truth can't be bought, twisted, or silenced, those who fear it start to fall apart. The West didn't lose control in one moment. It lost it the day India stopped believing their version of India. There was a time when India entered global forums with humility, often seated at the edge of the room, expected to listen more than speak. Decisions were made by a few, while the rest nodded in agreement. But in 2025, India doesn't enter quietly. It enters with presence, with purpose, and with the confidence of a nation that knows its worth. At platforms like G20, BRICS, SCO, and the United Nations, India is no longer a participant. It's a pillar. It's shaping agendas, not just reacting to them. It's questioning global imbalances, proposing solutions, and leading discussions on everything from climate change and digital infrastructure to defense cooperation and economic reform. And what's even more powerful, India is doing this while maintaining its own voice, not echoing anyone else's. This transformation hasn't come overnight. It's the result of decades of silent resilience, economic growth, diplomatic maturity, and a firm belief that India's civilizational wisdom deserves a seat at the highest tables. And now, when India speaks, the world listens. Not out of politeness, but out of necessity. In these global spaces, India is refusing to be boxed into someone else's narrative. It supports peace, but not at the cost of sovereignty. It values cooperation, but not at the expense of independence. Whether it's walking a fine line between competing superpowers or standing up for the global south, India is showing that strength isn't just about muscle, it's about balance and backbone. This is the posture that makes old powers nervous. Because when India stands tall, it reminds the world that influence no longer flows in one direction. And when a nation starts leading from its own truth, with dignity and direction, it's no longer rising, it's already arrived. There is a quiet revolution more powerful than any war or treaty. The revolution of the mind. For years, India was made to believe it needed validation from the West, that its progress was only real when approved by foreign media, foreign ratings, foreign experts. But something changed, gradually, then suddenly. India looked in the mirror and saw not a nation in waiting, But a civilization awakened, and in that moment it realized it owes the West nothing, not its success, not its pride, not its voice. This awakening didn't come from speeches. It came from experience, from seeing Western hypocrisy play out in real time, from being told to act a certain way while others broke the same rules, from being judged for defending its people while others waged wars for profit. India began to connect the dots, and when the pattern became clear, so did the decision to stop explaining and start acting. India began to walk a new path, one rooted in sovereignty, in self, belief, in ancestral strength. It started defining success not by foreign applause, but by how many lives it could uplift, how many minds it could awaken, how much dignity it could reclaim. And that shift was irreversible. The moment India stopped seeking permission, it became unstoppable. The moment it stopped playing by rules written elsewhere, it began to rise beyond their reach. And that is what truly unsettled the West, not India's growth, but India's independence of thought. This wasn't about aggression, it was about identity, and when a nation rediscovers who it is, when it remembers the truth of its history, the depth of its culture, and the power of its spirit, no one can control it again. That's the moment the West lost its grip, and that's the moment India truly began to rise. India's rise wasn't gifted, it was earned, not through war, but through wisdom, not through obedience, but through clarity. The West didn't lose control in one event. It lost it the moment India chose to stand, speak, and build on its own terms. Economically, spiritually, politically, India has awakened, and the world can no longer ignore it. Thank you for walking this journey of truth. Stay proud, stay informed, and never stop believing in your voice. The future isn't waiting. It's being shaped right now. Good luck to every awakened mind. And as always, thank you for being part of the change.